In the heart of Grammarville, a quiet but curious town nestled between the margins of dusty textbooks and whispered conversations in classrooms, something peculiar had begun to unravel. The people spoke in hesitant fragments. Sentences dangled in the air like unanchored thoughts. It was as if reality itself had lost its rhythm, its beat, its breath. At the center of this syntactic storm sat Jack Whiskers, a detective known for his gravelly voice and a jawline that could split infinitives. Rain tapped on his window in uneven Morse code. The faint scent of old books and dried ink filled his cramped office. He stirred his tea absent-mindedly, staring into the murky depths of his mug as if answers might float to the surface. "They say the present is a gift," he muttered to no one, "but mine came wrapped in ellipses." A soft knock broke the silence. Without looking up, he grunted, "Enter. Unless you're a dangling participle, then go dangle somewhere else." The door creaked open, and in stepped Ruby Sparks. Her wild curls were tucked under a rain-slicked hood, and her hands were shaking, not from the cold, but from urgency. "It's gone, Jack," she said, dropping a folder onto his desk. "The present's simple. It's disappeared." He didn't blink, just leaned back in his chair with the weary acceptance of a man who'd seen verbs vanish before. "So it's not just me narrating in the past tense," he said grimly. Together, they stepped out into the gloom of Grammarville. The town felt off. They made their way through the drizzle to a bunker-like building on the edge of town. The lights flickered inside as Tommy Tense, a wiry man with permanent sleep deprivation etched into his face, hunched over a console cluttered with grammar diagrams and blinking cables. Tommy squinted at the screen. Something massive hit the grammar grid around 7 a.m. on Tuesday. Just as the town was waking up, present tense activity dropped to 0, like a switch was flipped. "Any suspects?" Jack asked. Tommy leaned in. "My money's on the past perfect gang. They hate the now. Always want things done and dusted. Clean, controlled. No room for improvisation." Ruby shivered. "They operate out of Syntax Alley, right?" "Yeah," Tommy replied. "Where forgotten commas go to die." Before heading into the linguistic underworld, they stopped by headquarters to inform the captain. Captain Grumble was, as always, not amused. "You brought the cat again?" he snapped, sneezing explosively. Mr. Clawford, Jack's feline companion, yawned and knocked over a mug labeled "World's Grumpiest Captain." Jack folded his arms. "He follows me. Like regret." Or Simile's Grumble pointed a trembling finger. "You fix this, Whiskers, or you're back to patrolling comma splices." Outside, the sky had darkened further. Jack turned to Ruby. "Time to go where grammar goes to die." They entered Syntax Alley. The buildings loomed like paragraph blocks, grimy and full of broken rules. Trash blew past in the form of torn flashcards. In the alley's darkest corner, something moved. A sound, like fluttering wings, echoed overhead. Ruby looked up. "Jack." He followed her gaze. There, circling above, were the crows of misuse, beasts of chaos born from neglect and bad editing. Their wings spread wide, blotting out the last of the sunlight. Their caws twisted vowels and frayed prepositions. "They're feeding," Jack murmured. "On silence, on confusion." Suddenly, the air shifted. From the riverbank rose a sound. Low, steady, deliberate. A rhythm unlike the erratic cries of the crows. A procession of capybaras emerged from the mist, their wet fur glistening, eyes steady. They moved as one, calm as punctuation, determined as thesis statements. The leader approached. He was larger than the rest, adorned with a vine collar strung with faded flashcards. He spoke slowly, but his words echoed with ancient knowledge. "You have forgotten the present. We will restore it." Behind him, the capybaras formed a circle, humming harmoniously. Ruby's eyes filled with hope. They're guardians of balance. I thought they were a myth. They usually are, Jack muttered, until they show up riding the backs of verbs. Ruby gathered the children, organizing a chant. Together they repeated daily actions. I like apples. She reads books. We live in Grammarville. The air shimmered. Words solidified. The crows screeched in dismay as the grammar tide turned. Meanwhile, Jack and Mr. Clawford made their way to the top of the grammar clock tower. Each step groaned under the weight of forgotten sentence structures. The wind howled with half-written essays. At the summit, Jack stared at the great grammar dial. Its hands quivered between past and future, unable to settle. It needs to strike now, he said. We need the present. Mr. Clawford leapt gracefully onto the control panel. With the poise of a feline sage, he pressed the lever with a ginger paw. The bell tolled. Once, twice, a third time. A wave of clarity surged through the streets. Verbs snapped back into place. Children smiled and shouted, I run! She sings! They eat pancakes! In a final act of grammatical grace, one crow perched on a lamppost and corrected its own sentence. But Grammarville wasn't completely healed yet. Not while the past perfect gang was still at large. That evening, Jack and Ruby followed a new lead, an old librarian named Miss Merriweather, who claimed to have once archived the original tense codex. Inside the library's basement, behind walls of dusty tomes and forgotten atlases, they found her living among ancient grammars. Past perfect, she rasped, is jealous of the present. It believes that only what is complete deserves to be remembered. She handed them a torn page with glyphs that pulsed faintly. Ruby recognized the pattern. It was a spell of stabilization. Well, need to read it aloud at dawn, she said, at the Temple of Tense. And so, long before the first rays of sun touched Grammarville's rooftops, Jack, Ruby, and a retinue of capybaras ascended the hill behind the town. The temple lay in ruin. Columns cracked, inscriptions weathered. But it still held power. They placed the glyph on the altar. Ruby began to read. I walk. I learn. I become. Each line brought light. Each repetition steadied the present. When the ritual ended, the crows dissolved into mist, whispering apologies in perfect grammar. The tension in the air vanished. For the first time in days, Grammarville felt alive. Back in his office, Jack leaned back. The bakery now advertised with full sentences. Children shouted present-tense proclamations. Even the captain cracked a smile. Ruby looked out the window. Think it'll last this time? Jack smirked. Only if we keep speaking it. And somewhere far away, in a hidden den of dusty semicolons and bitter conjunctions, the past perfect gang made new plans. Because in Grammarville, the present may be simple, but peace never is.
Language review, present. Simple, used for facts, routines, and regular actions. I walk to school. He drinks coffee. They dance every Friday. Structure, subject. Plan qua space verb. Add asset for he, she, it. Example, I play. She plays. We play.
The present simple is always here, even if it sometimes needs rescuing. But the next threat didn't wait long. At precisely 3:13 a.m., the mayor's office was struck, not with fire or theft, but with silence. His speechwriter found his notes erased. Entire verbs, gone without a trace. Prepositions dangled in midair, their partners lost in fog. Ruby was the first to respond. With a flashlight and a flask of strong coffee, she crept through the corridors of City Hall, following the scent of misused modifiers. It led her to the old storage room. Converted, many years ago, into a vault for confidential idioms. Inside, the The phrases had been torn apart. Kick the bucket, lay next to, spill the beans. But the bucket and beans were nowhere to be found. In the shadows, something moved. "Who's there?" she whispered. A voice rasped from the dark. "The future is uncertain." Jack arrived moments later, revolver holstered, trenchcoat billowing. "You again," he growled. Future tense. "I thought we had a deal." The figure stepped into the light. Robed in silver, eyes glinting like ellipses, Future tense smiled coldly. "Deals expire, like coupons, like good grammar." Jack narrowed his eyes. Why attack now? "To remind the world," Future tense said, "that the present is fleeting. That what matters is what will be." Suddenly the walls groaned. The building began to shift, reality folding as future possibilities collided. Sentences transformed mid-thought. "I run" became, "I will have been running." Children's essays morphed into riddles of time. Jack gritted his teeth. "We need an anchor." Mr. Clawford, perched atop the mayor's desk, let out a calm meow and pawed at an old chalkboard. Ruby rushed over. "Of course," she said. "We rewrite." In real time together, they began to compose. "I write. We speak. She smiles." Each verb was a stake in the ground, a declaration of now. The tide slowed. Future tense snarled. "This isn't over." "Correct," Jack said. "This is happening." And with that, the present held.
In language review, present simple, reinforced. Used for now, always and often. I drink tea every morning. She walks to school. They live in a big house, don't forget. Add gi or ukaski for he, she, it too. Use it for habits, routines and truths. Protect it, practice it, live it. Because in Grammarville, verbs are everything.
The city, though saved from immediate collapse, buzzed with a tense kind of quiet, like an ellipsis waiting to be finished. But something still gnawed at the edges of Jack's thoughts. The feeling didn't come from data or reports, but from instinct. That sixth sense all good detectives have. The one that tingles like a misplaced modifier. He returned to his office long after dark. Mr. Clawford was already curled into a comma-shaped ball on the windowsill. Jack opened his bottom drawer, the one labeled "Do Not Reopen," and took out an old file. Whiskers and Clawford. Case 0. Back then, Grammarville wasn't under attack by crows or collapsing tenses. It was simply drifting. Sentences were lazy. No subjects, no verbs. People spoke in hashtags and vague exclamations. And that's when he found the cat. It was raining, of course. He was chasing a lead down verbose alley when he saw him, a drenched ginger kitten meowing beside a tipped-over dictionary. Jack had picked him up, wrapped him in a trenchcoat sleeve and muttered, "You're either lost, or you just misplaced your modifier." Since then, Clawford had stayed. He didn't talk. Except in ways Jack had learned to read: tail flicks, ear twitches, selective acts of sabotage. Together they'd cracked the case of the vanishing vowels, the pronoun panic, and the conjunction coup of '09. Tonight, the memories helped. But they didn't explain the new pattern Ruby had discovered: anomalies in the subjunctive realm. She burst into the office, cheeks red, scarf half untied. "Jack, it's happening again. The wishways are leaking." Jack blinked. Wishways? Conditional constructs. I wish I were. I suggest she leave. They're being rewritten as statements. The subjunctive is eroding. It hit him like an Oxford comma. If the subjunctive collapsed, Grammarville would lose its ability to dream, to imagine, to hope. There would be no way to express wishes or uncertainty. Only cold, concrete facts. "Well, need a guide," he said. "Someone who knows how to navigate the world of what might be." Ruby bit her lip. There's one, but she's in the imperative dimension. Jack sighed. Perfect. Because I've always wanted to be ordered around by grammar itself. They gathered supplies, metaphorical boots, tense stabilizers, and a scroll of sentence starters. The journey required passing through the portal of possibility, a shimmering ellipse located beneath the abandoned Department of Definitions. With Mr. Clawford perched on his shoulder like an editorial comment, Jack stepped into the light. The imperative dimension was not what he expected. It was loud, bossy, filled with signs like speak, write, listen carefully. Every structure barked commands. The air buzzed with urgency, and standing at the center was Imperia, Empress of Imperatives, robed in velvet punctuation. Her eyes narrowed at Jack. "State your business," she ordered. "We seek subjunctive salvation," Ruby explained. "Our town is losing its moods." Imperia paced. "Why should I help? The subjunctive rarely listens, always dreaming, always conditional." Jack stepped forward. "But it's what makes Grammarville human. Without wishes, there's only instruction." Imperia paused, then nodded once. She gave them a compass that spun not with direction, but with possibility, and a phrase to unlock the way. "If I were brave enough." They returned through the portal and climbed the spiral steps of syntax to the highest hill in town, the place of paradox. Ruby began to recite. If I were strong, I would stand. If she knew peace, she would rest. If they believed, they might learn. The winds howled, fighting back, but Mr. Clawford yowled defiantly. And then, silence. The sky cleared. The subjunctive held. Children began to write again. Not just facts, but hopes, stories, dreams. Jack exhaled. "Add it to the file," he said. Ruby smiled. "File's getting long." "Yeah," Jack said. "So's the fight." And somewhere, far off, a conjunction plotted rebellion.
Language expansion, the subjunctive mood. The subjunctive expresses wishes, hypotheticals, or things that are not real. Yet, I wish I were taller. If I were you, I'd study more. I suggest that he arrive early. It's subtle, powerful, and essential for nuance. Keep it safe. Use it well.
Because Grammarville depends on it. Days passed. Peace, tentative and twitchy, settled over Grammarville like a poorly placed semicolon. Jack Whiskers knew better than to relax. Quiet in this town always came with ellipses. He stood at the edge of the synonym labyrinth, an ancient and ever-shifting maze beneath the Thesaurus Hills. The entrance was a twisted arch of overused adjectives, and just beyond it pulsed a storm of interchangeable expressions. Ruby adjusted her glasses. "Reports say something's moving inside," she whispered. "Terms are overlapping, definitions collapsing. It's like meaning is being duplicated into nonsense." Jack muttered. "Last thing we need is another flood of generic sentences." The labyrinth had once been a sacred place, where students came to strengthen their vocabulary. Now it was chaos. Verbs leapt from stone to stone. Adjectives screamed as they were replaced mid-thought. Somewhere, a lonely big was being swallowed by a pompous enormous. With Mr. Clawford riding on Ruby's backpack like a literary sidekick, they ventured in. It was there they met her. A woman in a velvet coat sewn from similes, hair shimmering with semicolons. Sinara, guardian of precision, exiled during the Great Editing Rebellion. "You shouldn't be here," she warned. "Not while the repetitors rule the maze." "The who?" Jack asked. "Agents of the unoriginal. They clone ideas, recycle meaning. They want a world where everything says the same thing, over and over and over." Ruby stepped forward. "We need to find the core word. Without it, we can't stabilize clarity." Sinara's eyes softened. Then you'll need to face him. Adverbius. They found him deep in the heart of the labyrinth, perched atop a glowing thesaurus throne. Cloaked in speed and ambiguity, Adverbius smirked. Well, well, look who bravely walks directly, boldly, unnecessarily into danger, he purred. How delightfully foolish. Jack stepped forward. You've muddied the modifiers long enough. Adverbius rose. I speak for nuance, for flair, for dramatic. Confusion, Ruby snapped. Mr. Clawford leapt, knocking over a stack of redundant adverbs. In the scramble, Ruby reached the core word and whispered its true name. Clarity. The maze shook, walls reformed, synonyms found their places, words calmed. Adverbius vanished in a puff of contradictory fog. They emerged into sunlight. Sinara nodded, then turned to mist. Back in town, people began speaking with purpose again. Sentences had texture, verbs had direction, and adjectives knew their place. Jack leaned on a lamppost. Another threat averted. But how many more are out there? Ruby held up a note that had just arrived. A single word. They. Pronouns, she said. Unspecified, unaccounted for, unpredictable. Jack groaned. I hate pronominal puzzles. And so, they prepared. Because in Grammarville, clarity is earned.
At Language Focus, precision in vocabulary. Use synonyms thoughtfully. Not all words mean exactly the same thing. Avoid unnecessary adverbs. He ran quickly. He sprinted. Choose specific, vivid verbs and adjectives. Clarity is the goal. Precision is the path.
And Grammarville? It's the battlefield. Days passed. Peace, tentative and twitchy, settled over Grammarville like a poorly placed semicolon. Jack Whiskers knew better than to relax. Quiet in this town always came with ellipses. He stood at the edge of the synonym labyrinth. An ancient and ever-shifting maze beneath the Thesaurus hills. The entrance was a twisted arch of overused adjectives, and just beyond it pulsed a storm of interchangeable expressions. Ruby adjusted her glasses. Reports say something's moving inside, she whispered. Terms are overlapping, definitions collapsing. It's like meaning is being duplicated into nonsense. Jack muttered, Last thing we need is another flood of generic sentences. The labyrinth had once been a sacred place, where students came to strengthen their vocabulary. Now it was chaos. Verbs leapt from stone to stone. Adjectives screamed as they were replaced mid-thought. Somewhere, a lonely big was being swallowed by a pompous enormous. With Mr. Clawford riding on Ruby's backpack like a literary sidekick, they ventured in. It was there they met her. A woman in a velvet coat sewn from similes, hair shimmering with semicolons. Sinara. Guardian of precision. Exiled during the Great Editing Rebellion. You shouldn't be here, she warned. Not while the repetitors rule the maze. The who? Jack asked. Agents of the unoriginal. They clone ideas, recycle meaning. They want a world where everything says the same thing, over and over and over. Ruby stepped forward. We need to find the core word. Without it, we can't stabilize clarity. Cinerous eyes softened. Then you'll need to face him. Adverbius. They found him deep in the heart of the labyrinth, perched atop a glowing thesaurus throne. Cloaked in speed and ambiguity, Adverbius smirked. Well, well. Look who bravely walks directly, boldly, unnecessarily into danger, he purred. How delightfully foolish. Jack stepped forward. You've muddied the modifiers long enough. Adverbius rose. I speak for nuance. For flair, for dramatic confusion, Ruby snapped. Mr. Clawford leapt, knocking over a stack of redundant adverbs. In the scramble, Ruby reached the core word and whispered its true name. clarity. The maze shook. Walls reformed. Synonyms found their places. Words calmed. Adverbials vanished in a puff of contradictory fog. They emerged into sunlight. Sinara nodded, then turned to mist. Back in town, people began speaking with purpose again. Sentences had texture, verbs had direction, and adjectives knew their place. Jack leaned on a lamppost. Another threat averted. But how many more are out there? Ruby held up a note that had just arrived. A single word. They. Pronouns, she said. Unspecified. Unaccounted for. Unpredictable. Jack groaned. I hate pronominal puzzles. And so, they prepared. Because in Grammarville, clarity is earned.
Language focus, precision in vocabulary. Use synonyms thoughtfully. Not all words mean exactly the same thing. Avoid unnecessary adverbs. He ran quickly. He sprinted. Choose specific, vivid verbs and adjectives. Clarity is the goal. Precision is the path.
And Grammarville, it's the battlefield. The next morning greeted Grammarville with an unsettling calm. Like the pause before someone uses literally incorrectly, Jack sipped his tea, which insisted on steeping in passive voice, and studied a postcard that had materialized under his door. It read only one word. They. Ruby examined it. No sender, no context, no antecedent. Just they. Jack rubbed his temples. Ah, yes. The unspecified plural, the favorite tool of shady blame and lazy storytelling. Within hours, strange things began happening. They say it's going to rain, muttered a shopkeeper under cloudless skies. They want us to use fewer commas, claimed a rebellious teenager. They took the donuts, whispered the captain, staring forlornly at an empty box. They're everywhere, Ruby said, and nowhere. To find answers, Jack and Ruby paid a visit to the Hall of Antecedents, a vast hall where pronouns were once proudly paired with their noun counterparts. Now, many exhibits had blank labels. The great bust of, they sat surrounded by fog machines and contradictory quotes. At the far end stood an old friend, Professor Pluro, the pronoun curator. He wore 12 pairs of glasses and answered every question with, that depends. They is unstable, he said. That's grammatically. Ruby began. Welcome to 2025, Jack cut in. Professor Pluro led them to the Chamber of Clarification. There, using a device known only as the referent resolver, which looked suspiciously like a bingo machine, they tried to trace the origins of the recent they attacks. What emerged was not a person, but a movement, a mischievous cabal of undefined references known as the indefinites. Their motto? Let the reader figure it out. Ruby gasped. The same group that smuggled it into subject positions with no explanation? Jack nodded grimly. And the ones behind the passive plot of 98. With the help of Pluro and a backup team of highly trained demonstrative pronouns, this, that, these, and Craig, they ventured into the gray zone between nouns and nonsense. There, in the shifting fields of vagaria, they found the indefinites camped around an enormous banner that read, They were right. Their leader, a shadowy figure with a blurry outline and a voice like static, addressed them. We represent freedom. We represent flexibility. We represent generalizations. Ruby shouted. But without clarity, language collapses into confusion. The leader responded. They told us you'd say that. Chaos erupted. The ground cracked with ambiguity. Mr. Clawford, unfazed, batted a loose pronoun off the battlefield with majestic indifference. Jack stepped forward, holding aloft the clarifier crystal, a relic from the early dictionaries. Define yourself, he bellowed. A hush fell. Slowly, the leader took shape. It was everyone and no one. The mob hesitated. Some began stating their names and roles. Im Gregorius, I stole the donuts. Im Marcia, I said it would rain because I misread the weather app one by one. They returned to specificity. The fog cleared. Back at the Hall of Antecedents, Ruby mounted a plaque under the bust of they. They were confusing, until they weren't. Jack grinned. Looks like we've earned a break, Ruby raised an eyebrow. Until someone forgets what a semicolon is again. Mr. Clawford sneezed, and a semicolon rolled out of his fur. Yeah, we're never done.
Language focus, pronoun clarity. Make sure pronouns refer clearly to a specific noun, antecedent. Avoid vague subjects like they unless already defined. Prefer clarity over cleverness when stakes are high, because in Grammarville, even a pronoun constant a war or end one with a comma and a cat